I'm the coordinator of I'm the coordinator of education and communications with MEMFA. I just want to let everyone know that we're recording this session today. I hope that's okay. If you have any problems with that, please let me know or take yourself off camera just to let you know about that. So today we're talking about affordable housing now, and I'm very happy to have Noah Yock from the City of Winnipeg. So Noah is a professional planner, and he holds a master's degree in urban planning and an undergraduate degree in urban studies. He has recently been the city's housing policy and neighborhood revitalization coordinator. And we are also joined by Angela Matheson, who is the president and CEO of Centre Venture Development Corporation, which is an arm's length agency of the City of Winnipeg. Angela holds a master's degree in city planning and has played a central role in urban development issues in Winnipeg over the last 20 years. So before we get started, I want to acknowledge that we're meeting on the lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that were made on these territories and acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past. As a housing organization, we dedicate ourselves to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration, particularly when it comes to housing equity. So we have a few more people coming in, but just to keep on time here, I'm going to say Noah and Angela, feel free to take it away. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Beth, and good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, we're just going to provide overview sort of the program and how we got here, and then we can walk through the Affordable Housing Now website. And so I guess I would just begin by saying this program's been in the making for a little while, and sort of comes from about 3 different policy areas or directions of council. One is sort of on the heels of a housing needs assessment that was conducted in 2020, and with the intent of coming up with an affordable housing program from that. The second comes from a report that was drafted for council's consideration called the Menu of Options for Affordable Housing Strategy, which is sort of outlined the types of tools that the city does have at its disposal to use to incent affordable housing or support affordable housing, tax programs being one of them. And then the third is the city's work led by Community Services on a poverty reduction strategy, which also identified this program as a need. So it's sort of those 3 things that culminated into the development of this Affordable Housing Now program, which is sort of housed within a larger TIF policy framework of the CAO's office, which was, I guess, unveiled in February of this year. And then this program was approved by council and launched very shortly after. March 24, I believe, was the date that council approved it. So in a nutshell, the program is really meant to leverage CMHC funding programs under the National Housing Strategy. So it's to provide access to that and additional support. We're finding that not a lot of projects we're going through, for example, co-investment, partly because some of those programs require support from another level of government. So this is an opportunity for the city to participate. But sort of at the other end of this, or the other consideration, is that the city does not have a lot of resources for housing and is not sort of a provider of housing. So we want to make sure that our role is, that we're really taking advantage of the resources and programs out there, such as the CMHC National Housing Strategy programs, so that we can tap into those programs and the resources of CMHC as well, both in terms of staff resources, like to review the viability of applications and things like that, and also sort of the long-term commitment to monitoring the projects and things like that. So this is really the best fit for Winnipeg, given our resources, that we could sort of try to work together to get the best out of both our programs too. So to that end, we actually had signed a memorandum of understanding with CMHC prior to the launch of the program, just to provide sort of the the backbone sort of how we would collaborate together. So just get maybe into the details, some of the details of the program itself. You may or may not be aware of the details, but essentially $50 million of tax increment financing has been allocated through this program to support affordable housing. I'm going to assume that most, if not everyone in the room, knows what tax increment financing is, but I'm just going to, just in case you don't, I'm just going to offer a pretty quick definition. And essentially, it's the difference between the value of a land and its improvements before the development and then post development. And the city is agreeing to forego some of those tax realizations back to the proponent to support the affordable housing project. So you take a very simple example. Let's say a property is worth $10,000, or sorry, the municipal tax that property pays, like right now before the development, is $10,000 a year. Let's just say that after the development, based on the proposal itself, and say there's a 50-unit multifamily development that's going to be proposed. Well, once that is built and constructed, it's estimated that those taxes, now that building will pay about $50,000 of municipal taxes a year. Well, the difference, or the increment, is the difference between the $10,000 that property was paying and then the $50,000 a year that it would pay based on the new value of the land and improvements. So the city is basically saying, we will give you for 15 or 25 years, or how you qualify through the program, we will rebate back to you up to 80% of the municipal taxes. So if we took the example that it was $10,000 of municipal taxes being paid now, and then post development it was 50,000, so the difference is 40,000. So 80% of that would be $32,000 a year. So it's money that the city is foregoing in the future in order to support these projects as a benefit to the overall health of the city. So in addition to the $50 million of tax increment financing that's allocated, there's also another $2 million just in direct grants. 1 million of those is to cover the cost of permit fees, and the other $1 million is to cover the cost of construction fees. From that pool of funding, it's to support very affordable units, supportive housing, transitional housing, rent geared income at very close to social housing rates. So it's those funds will be allocated to those projects for some units having really deep affordability, and the maximum would be $10,000 a door and $250,000 maximum per project. So $2 million does not go all that far. It's not impossible that funding can be allocated to funds in the future, but this is what we have to work with at this point. In terms of the duration of the funding, so the TIF terms are either 15 years or 25. So the base is 15 years, which allows private developers to participate, and then there's also 25 years for either if you're a nonprofit, or if the development's in the downtown or in a housing improvement zone, and in some cases if it's a vacant and derelict building, because there is a lot of those in the city, and so this program can maybe help address a few of those as well. So the process is pretty simple. Applicants can apply, and then the process is that, well, we do some consultation with CMHC, of course, to make sure, because the projects that we're going to fund through this program must go on and be successful in the CMHC program. So we kind of compare notes in terms of timing and project viability and those sorts of things. But once we've found a project that we think we can support, what we would do is get our taxation department to run the assessment and come up with a pretty good guess of what those incremental taxes would be. And then we would provide a letter to the applicant, if approved by our director, that we would, support them for the project would be supported with X amount of dollars through incremental taxes. And then that's called, we call that letter a conditional approval letter. And then that gives them time. Well, number one, it allows them to provide that to CMHC as support from another level of government. And then it also gives them time to, line up their other, get all their ducks in a row. And then once they've been approved by CMHC and actually are subscribed to one of the affordable housing programs, then they will be required to enter into an agreement, a legal agreement with the city of Winnipeg. And that's just to protect the city's interests. If something should happen, like the affordability stops within a year, well, then then the city would not be in a position to keep, funding the project. So that's pretty much the process. And then from there, the TIF would just get rebated on a yearly basis. The money would flow to the proponent once the project's completed. So that's for the grants and for the tax increment financing. So the proponent would pay their taxes as they usually do, and then the city would grant back the applicable portion each year until the funding commitment was concluded. And just in terms of some of the minimum requirements of the program. So the minimum requirement is that any development must provide at least 30% of the units at less than 80% median market rent. But I want to stress that that's just the minimum. And most of the projects that will be supported through this program will exceed those targets. In the CMHC application process, their scoring grid also favors, provides more support for projects that provide more in terms of affordability and accessibility, sustainability, and they're very open about that commitment to support, projects that are hitting those notes higher than others. So we trying to make this a program that can fit in a little bit of everything. We know that mixed income housing is very important, but we also know that the real strong needs are for things like supportive housing, transitional housing, housing provided by nonprofits. So we're trying to find ways to support sort of the deeper affordable units, but also support mixed income developments in general where possible. Things that aren't funded through the project are existing projects that have already been funded by CMHC. So, for example, projects that are, for example, have been approved under the Rapid Housing Initiative stream, things like that. So the funding's not retroactive. It's not meant as a top up for projects that are already sort of imminent. And it's for projects that would not otherwise be developed without demonstrating the need for financial support. So we're hoping through the project, or we've indicated in our council report at least, that we're hoping for about 1,500 affordable housing units from this program. And part of this too is we do have a connection with organizations such as End Homelessness Winnipeg and understand their housing targets. And so we are trying to find ways through this program that some of those targets can be achieved. And in our and through our program, as applicants submit proposals, we ask them if they're okay if we share their project information with both End Homelessness Winnipeg and the province in case there's other funding opportunities that are available. So, we're also trying to partner where possible to expand the relevance or the impact of this program. So I'm going to in a minute or two just pull up the website. I'm not sure if everybody's seen it or not. Angela Matheson here from CentreVenture and her team have been really instrumental in the development of the website and all of the forms and applications. So I think a lot of the questions there probably could be best answered by Angela, but we will see what kind of questions come up. So maybe if it's okay, I'll just go to the affordable housing website and we'll just spend a couple minutes on it. Okay, can everybody see this okay? Okay, here, seeing a few heads nod. So, okay, so this is just so how the website is arranged. So it just, gives a little bit of background. So when it was approved, March 24, 2022, and then sort of what it's designed to do. So basically complement and support programs under the National Housing Strategy. And then you can either go and just click to apply now if you don't want to read any of the information, or you can go through some of the information in the tabs here. So we just have basic eligibility requirements. So who can apply? Again, it's nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, just that the nonprofit organizations typically have there's more resources and longer term TIFs provided to those projects. So as eligible projects, so social housing, mixed market, affordable housing, transitional housing, supportive housing. So those are the types of projects that would be eligible. Eligible type of project. So again, this is support new supply. So it'd be new construction or the conversion of non-residential to residential, or the rehabilitation of a former building that used to be residential. So that's really to address the fact that Winnipeg has a lot of vacant derelict buildings, which would be great to be turned back to residential uses. In terms of the program requirements, and a lot of these sort of align with the minimum requirements of CMHC, is that the development must have a minimum of 5 units. It must have a primary residential use area greater than 70%, and that more than 30% or 30% of the units be rented at no less than 70% median market, or no greater than 80% median market rent, and that they'll go on to get funding through CMHC. Otherwise, the city funding commitment does not continue, and that they are meeting priority needs identified in the housing and needs assessment. So we had talked briefly about the housing needs assessment as sort of the precursor, or a precursor to the program. And so we provide a link to that, and then we provide a link to some CMHC information. So proponents can see if they're eligible. If they have a question at any time, they can use this area here to ask a question, or they can use that to submit an actual expression of interest. So you just type in a question and submit. And then we go on to the funding stream. So I did talk about this briefly, not in all details, but Essentially, it's $50 million worth of the tax increment financing, and this is only the municipal shares. The province is not part of this program. So in some past programs, the province and city have worked together, which means that the TIF allocation applied to provincial taxes as well. So this applies to municipal taxes only. I should note that that the program provides 40% of the overall funding to projects that are located in the downtown, and the remainder, 60% or 30 million, is anywhere, well, not anywhere in the city, anywhere in the city that makes sense for affordable housing to be developed. So close to transportation amenities, things like that. Yeah, I think I've covered a lot of this. It's 80% of the incremental municipal taxes, so it's not 100%, and that just ensures that the city, though they're foregoing a lot of tax revenue, that there is, that they are generating or accessing a little bit more than the current taxes being paid now. So again, just where these are allowed, or where the program exists. So for 25 years is projects located in the downtown, located in housing improvement zones. And the reason for that is because the city supports neighborhood revitalization through the Housing Rehabilitation Investment Reserve. And so there's currently five housing improvement zone neighborhoods. So this provides longer term TIFs in those neighborhoods. Yeah, so maybe, and then, well, and we talked about the $2 million in capital grants. So maybe I'll just sort of leave it there. I will go into the next part here, which is the application process. So this is pretty convenient. You can download the expression of interest form if you just want to get some input to see if your project is on the right track, or if you think that your project's well advanced, then you can download the application workbook and fill out the actual application form. So either way, and then you can also download the full program guide. I won't here, but just additional information on the process. We're sort of aiming for, like, if we have an application that's full and complete, we're aiming for about a 3-week or a month turnaround on the conditional approval letter. However, assessment and taxation does have to do a mock-up of the incremental taxes so that we can communicate what the value of that subsidy would be. So that's a bit of a work in progress, but we're working through those. And then again, we would submit the conditional approval letter if the director of planning approves it, and then that letter would go to CMHC, and then a grant agreement would be filled out upon successful subscription to a CMHC program. And then it just has some further resources. So just some other potential funding opportunities and other links. We mentioned end homelessness, and their targets and work are important. So it provides some information on what they're working on and their plans, links to Manitoba Housing, things like that. So what you can do is, through the application process, somebody would download one of these forms, they would save it, and then they would use this area to submit, and then they could just upload the file, which I think allows 10 megabytes. We have had proponents who have had files and drawings that are larger, so they could just share that through Dropbox or others. So maybe I will leave it there and I'll ask Angela if there's anything on this website that I overlooked.
Hi everyone. Thanks for having us here today. No, I don't think you have, Noah. I think one of the things that I always like to sort of put it into sort of brass tacks, I guess, for people is that, and part of the reason that Center Venture is involved is because we did for very many years administer for the City of Winnipeg tax increment financing grants in downtown Winnipeg. I think about 52 projects in total. And as well, we have historically lent to housing projects, and we've done about 33 loans to housing projects over the years. So we have some experience on, how these types of grants can support projects. And like for the TIF support in the context of affordable housing, it really does one of two things, I guess, depending on the type of project that you're working on. So if you're doing sort of a mixed market affordable, where you will be carrying some amount of debt financing, the city support obviously helps you service that financing or carry a larger loan, because you have that incremental sort of cash flow that you normally wouldn't have if you were paying the full, not being rebated your taxes. Or furthermore, I guess, if you're doing more of a supportive housing where you may have a lot of your capital covered, it certainly can help you on the operating side and to defray some of those support services and costs in projects. And it really will depend what the benefit is to you, depending on, first of all, what the pre-state of your property is like. So if it's a low value property and you're putting a new building on there, then you'll receive quite a bit of increment. If there was maybe a valuable building there before that's being demolished and you're building new, the increment may not be that high. But just very, very roughly speaking, typically, on an annual basis, that grant would be between $600 to sort of $800, depending on the state of the property per unit. So that just gives you some context of what that would mean. That amount applies to the whole building. So if you are going through CMHC with a mixed market type of where you have some market units and then the minimum threshold of affordable units, the tax increment applies to the entire building to help you defray the cost of those affordable units. So I think I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of context to the program and what that would mean to groups, and obviously the capital support for projects that are achieving higher social outcomes would also receive an upfront grant, which, I mean, everybody knows what the value of that is, which is it's gold, obviously. So I don't think we designed the sheets, the application workbook in the, and if anybody has any issues, please let us know, because, we're just sort of test driving these things. We designed it as a PDF, so it's easy for people to fill out. You don't have to, I know CMHC has sort of Excel sheets, which are a bit tricky to use. So it's very basic, and we really designed it in a way that groups wouldn't have to repeat information. If you are going through CMHC programs or support, say with Manitoba Housing, you're going to have to provide the same information. So we're not asking you to reinvent anything. What happens is then it goes into a database that we have where we can certainly identify quickly through our experience whether something doesn't maybe seem quite right, or a number seems wrong, or maybe an estimate is too high or too low from an operating perspective. We would even let you know. So really we're here to, I think, provide our experience in the analysis of these proposals for Noah's group, but also to support applicants if we think we see something that maybe could be improved, or if we know of other opportunities. Center Venture, we've been a recipient of CMHC financing for some of our projects, so we're also well aware of that process and what's involved. And yeah, so I'll stop there.
Thanks, Angela. Hey, maybe before we go on to questions, I just wanted to kind of frame this in another context, in that In the city of Winnipeg right now, there's a lot of focus and interest on affordable housing. When I started this position a couple of years ago, basically the most sort of concrete program we had is the Housing Rehabilitation Investment Reserve, which is the program that provides funding to the 5 housing improvement zones. So that's been $1 million a year allocated for roughly the last 20 years. So fast forward today, and a lot of this has to do with the strong partnership we're developing with Cmhc, is that we are delivering now $78 million worth of funding to affordable housing. So 52 million through this program, $25 million through the first 2 rounds of the Rapid Housing Initiative that is currently underway. We're hoping that round 3 is around the corner as well. So there's a lot of activity, and there's also some other programs that we've created, such as where city-owned lands are owned, are surplus and located within the 5 housing improvement zones. Nonprofits can provide or can apply for those lands first at a discount before they are offered on the public market. So there are, obviously there are some in-kind contributions there. So that's really changed a lot over the last few years. So this is, I think, personally, I think this is a very exciting program, and it's a real game changer for the city, because it's a lot of commitment. And this program was approved unanimously by council. So I think that there is a lot of support, sort of demonstrated at least very recently by the city of Winnipeg. So it's an exciting time for housing. That's for sure. So maybe I will just leave it at that. And again, thanks so much for having us. And if anybody has any questions, now's the time. It's just if you have a tough question, please address it to Angela.
Thanks so much, Noah and Angela. Yeah, and folks, if you want to ask a question, you can put it in the chat and I can read it out, or feel free to just raise your hand, unmute yourselves, and ask away. I think we have a pretty small group here, so that should work just fine. We've got a quiet group, no questions at all. We've got Noah and Angela for about another 20 minutes. So, yeah, Stephen, go ahead.
Thanks, Beth. Noah, we've talked a bit about this before, but just a question for us, for Indigenous governments and that can receive funding for housing projects outside CMHC. Like through Indigenous Services Canada or something like that, or CERNAC. Is there any consideration for something like that can qualify into this? Like we are pursuing CMHC funding for some of those projects, but we are getting them for a housing project, say from CERNAC, for example.
Yeah, so this program is specifically designed to leverage programs under the National Housing Strategy specifically. And it's sort of the true reason that the program was developed. And so in the current, like as the program's currently approved, it would only be for programs under the National Housing Strategy, CMHC.
Okay, so even if a program met like all intents of the National Housing Strategy and everything else, it just wasn't funded by CMHC, it can't come into the program at all.
Well, it kind of has to do with the way the bylaw is written for the program. The bylaw is specific. So in order for that to happen, there would have to be, there I guess would have to be an amendment to that, to the bylaw. But sort of again, like the reason for this program particularly was like the direct collaboration with CMHC. So we have a memorandum of understanding with CMHC that all ties into the development of this program to sort of jointly, for us to leverage their funding sources. So it wasn't like we don't have a memorandum of understanding with anybody beyond CMHC. We were just seeing that there's a lot of money in these and resources associated with CMHC funding programs, and it didn't seem like a lot of that funding was being spent in Winnipeg. So we were trying to find a way specifically to access that specific pool of funding. But Stephen, that's a great question, and if not through this program, like the city can always expand or amend existing programs, and also there are other ways that projects can be supported through tax increment financing, like council could approve, certainly has in the past approved specific projects for tax increment financing. So those opportunities can also be explored.
Noah, Joanne here. Two questions. One, funding under the Municipal Green Fund, my understanding is that's part of the National Housing Strategy. So if projects are looking at energy retrofits, is there something here for them as well?
Well, the project has to meet the affordable housing requirement. So if it's just explicitly or expressly energy improvements, then no.
Then no, okay.
It has to be affordable housing has to be a component, has to be the sort of, the focus of the program.
Okay.
Or the project.
Okay. And
but I can say a lot of the projects that are interested in this are looking at investment through co-investment and also the Municipal Green Fund. So there's ways to sort of strengthen projects through those multiple funding sources.
Okay, that's good. And can a group apply for more than once? Can we apply for a couple different projects?
Yeah, it's based on the project itself. So
okay.
If there's an organization or group that's very has got a great plan and they've got another great plan, we want to take that. We want to be able to fund that. So the goal again is affordable housing, and getting as much needs that where the needs are the greatest. So yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So Noah, it's Dean here. I'm associated with Joanne from Bethel Place, and we have been for quite a while now in consideration of a new project. With initiating the process through you and Housing Now, if we are approved by the city, does the city carry on with us or into CMHC, or would we receive back from you an affirmation and then carry on with CMHC ourselves? And I guess a part of that question would be, should we be informing CMHC that we were going to try and carry on through you as well?
Well, yeah, and so the answer to your question is, okay, so we would provide a conditional approval letter that would commit funding from the city. You would carry on with CMHC, and then that would sort of be your major, for to access their funding, that you would continue on with them, but you would have to enter into a legal agreement with the city of Winnipeg, just so that the city can protect its own financial interests, so that if the project, say, did not remain affordable, then the city would have some of its own recourse in terms of, let's say in 5 years, a project stopped providing affordable housing, and CMHC let us know that they're no longer, meeting the requirements of their program. Well, then the city would have the ability to stop, rebating, taxes and things like that, if it no longer meets the intent of the program. So, but that, agreement is fairly simple. Yeah, I think it would be good for you to communicate, that was CMHC. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
And if anybody's aware of any projects, just feel free to steer them this direction. They can always apply for an expression of interest. If there's a project that is maybe not quite ready to go and they need a little bit more information, or maybe just want to know what additional things that they require, that process can be helpful, and we can sort of, just keep that information on file. Or if somebody does apply and the project is not quite ready, we don't necessarily have to say the project is refused. We can just sort of keep that dialogue going in the event that the application does become a little bit supportable.
Any more questions out there? Comments, thoughts? Okay, well, I think then we can end a little bit early here, and if we can all step outside for 10 or 15 minutes and enjoy that sunshine. Noah and Angela, thanks so much again for joining us. And just so everyone knows, we will send out a link to this recording just in case you want to go back, see if you missed anything, etc. Yeah. So thanks again to Noah and Angela, and thanks to everyone for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks,
Have
everyone.
a great day.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Hi, Dorian.
Yeah, hi, that's it. All right, so the recording will be stored on my computer. I'll then send you a link to it once we're done.
That sounds great.
All right, okay,
Thanks so much.
thanks. Yeah,
Okay,
bye.
have a good day.
You
Bye.
too.